Hey friends, welcome back to another episode on the Grace-Filled Leader podcast. Yesterday we talked about choosing whether it's more important to be right or get results. We talked about it mostly in the context of leadership and team dynamics. Well, it got me thinking about another area of our lives when this shows up, and it is in our relationships. It is a painful lesson that has become one of the themes by which I am more intentional about living, especially in my closest relationships. Have you witnessed or found yourself choosing to be right rather than building, maintaining, or restoring a relationship? Let's talk about it. Hey friend, are you feeling overwhelmed by the never-ending demands on your time? Do you find yourself constantly juggling work, family, and personal commitments only to end up feeling guilty and burned out? Well, I've got just the solution for you. Join me for my upcoming workshop, the Time Management Makeover, where I'll be sharing 4 powerful steps to help you create more time with less guilt. Trust me, you won't want to miss this opportunity to transform your relationship with time and reclaim control of your schedule. Head over to the link in the show notes to reserve your spot now. And hey, it's free. Welcome to the Grace-Filled Leader podcast. Do you want better work-life balance? Do you get stuck in patterns of perfectionism and people-pleasing? Have you always been an overachiever but never really felt good enough, no matter how much outward success you achieve? Do you want more time for the things that matter most? Well, you are in the right place. Here on the Grace-Filled Leader podcast, we focus on spirit-driven success and share the secrets to having better work-life balance as a busy woman in leadership. Here you will learn how to set boundaries like a boss, find peace of mind, and reclaim your time for the things that matter most. Hi, I'm Tanya, a wife, mom, leader, and certified Christian life coach. For most of my life, I tried to find worthiness through achievement. I spent decades people-pleasing and pouring myself into my work. I was looking for my value through the approval of others. This led me to feel burned out, empty, and exhausted. I had no time or energy for myself or my family. I realized that I was wasting time and energy looking for validation in all the wrong places. But my life changed when I finally surrendered and God showed me a different way. It is my mission to help you start living the abundant life God has for you. If you're ready to become fueled by grace and find freedom from people-pleasing, if you're ready to multiply your time and impact as a Christian woman in leadership, this podcast is for you. Roll up your sleeves, sister friends. It's time to get after it. I am constantly trying to navigate the waters of living with integrity, seeking and speaking truth while building and maintaining relationships that are authentic, loving, and grace-giving. Now let's just add a little disclaimer here. I am most definitely a work in progress. I hope the progress is evident in my relationships, but I am not and will never be perfect. So I enter this conversation with humility and vulnerability. A strong sense of purpose, principle, and moral code is hardwired in my brain, and some of it is based in biblical truth, and some of it is rooted in my life experiences, my upbringing, how I've interpreted the world, basically. It must be emphasized that the first, for me, is the source by which all things need to be measured, biblical truth, and put in the appropriate context. I'm a toddler Christian, so this means relearning some things and screwing up sometimes. But the reason I say that is there is a propensity in many of us to have some shred of humanness that wants to be right and stand on our principles at all costs. The true work for me is learning what is flawed principle, what is biblical principle, and what is just my pride and ego talking. Some principles are not worth standing on for the sake of being right, and instead compromise our ability to be in authentic and meaningful relationships. They compromise our ability to actually be a witness to truth, love, and grace. They compromise our ability to be disciples and to bear witness to the love and the character of Jesus. I can honestly say that I have been a giver and a recipient of this reality over the years. I'm going to try to give you a couple of examples of each, or one example of each anyway. Both scenarios were largely due to my need to gain the approval of others and please others. They were a result of living in a state of fear or worry. As I've shared many times on this show, I spent most of my life trying to achieve and gain approval in an effort to be validated, to be valued. As a child, a teenager, a young adult, I remember feeling what seemed to be an almost constant anxiety around disappointing others, not being liked, not being loved, not being good enough. So much so, I'm not sure I really knew what made me uniquely me. I felt such a need to gain approval that I performed in a way that would improve my odds of being rewarded with approval, kudos, inclusion, and decrease the odds of causing conflict or disapproval. Rarely did I need to be physically disciplined as a child. It was more than enough to fear disappointing or upsetting my parents. I always followed the rules in school and in life, really, and could not cope with the idea of getting less than an A in my classes. I got 1 B+ in my entire academic career, and mind you, I've gone from kindergarten up through getting my master's degree, and I've gotten 1 B+. And that was in a junior high gym class because I was so terrified of being humiliated that I convinced myself and my Phi Ed teacher that I had a knee issue that would just not allow me to run the mile during physical fitness week. I honestly still look back on that and struggle to not see myself as a failure. Why wasn't I just brave? Why couldn't I just do my best and be okay with the outcome? I literally lost sleep because I feared failure that much. In relationships of every kind, I did not present myself in a way that said I was worthy of having my own opinions or my own feelings if they differed from the other person. I could not stand the thought of someone being upset with me. I would often apologize or try to fix things that weren't my responsibility to fix or apologize for. I would forego my own desire to be validated just to keep peace. But that pattern would inevitably come out in a victim mentality or martyrdom somewhere down the line. In romantic relationships, rather than communicating responsibly and respectfully, I would give the silent treatment, trying to impose guilt, even though those were the very kinds of behaviors that were the most difficult for me to bear when on the receiving end. Isn't it ironic? It is not unlike what we see and hear about people who were abused as children. They often become abusers. It's what we know, so it's what we do. I'm not saying I'm in that same category. I'm just drawing a parallel to point out the irony of how patterns of behavior tend to repeat themselves. I think back now and I wonder, how boring was I? But there's a degree to which much of my patterns of being served me well, at least in a superficial sense. I achieved academic and professional success. I developed lasting friendships and relationships. I will say there are a handful of people that became safe people who made it a safe place for me to be honest and real and human. A safe place to just be, not to perform. I praise God for the people in my life who are and have always been able to see and accept me for me. The cost of living in fear, however, is more of an internal battle. It is a gnawing that can't be understood unless you've experienced it. These patterns followed me through every relationship, though I was not as aware until later in life. There came a point at which my tolerance for the anxiety and fear that had been my life partners was just maxed out. I was tired of going through life walking on eggshells, afraid to say what I thought or do what felt right for me because I didn't want to face the consequence of upsetting someone else. I was tired of perseverating on what people might be thinking about me if I did speak up with a differing opinion. Worst of all, I realized that I had been parenting my kids in a way that imposed fear and guilt. Because I worried about what people thought of me, I worried about what people would think of them if they weren't, quote, good kids, if they didn't get good grades, if they didn't do their best and make a good impression. I did not allow them to fail during a time in their lives when the failures are smaller. I protected them, or so I thought, by hovering and helicoptering. While I still believe we are put here to be parents, not friends to our children, that they need to understand that choices come with consequences, and that there are situations when there is a right choice and a wrong choice, I think that I could have delivered these messages in a better way sometimes. While there would be rules and structure and expectations and consequences, I would want to be certain that they understood without a doubt that my love for them and God's love for them is not based on their performance. I love them just because they are here and they are mine. And while they will make mistakes and there will be consequences for their mistakes, I would always want to be a safe place for them to fail. I don't want them to feel that they have to avoid telling me something or sharing a struggle because they fear my judgment. It doesn't mean that consequences aren't imposed or that we might not be upset by the choices they make, but I want to find the middle ground that allows for building of relationship while they learn about consequences for their choices. In recent years, I've tried to be much more intentional about how I speak wisdom into the lives of my adult children. There's a degree to which I'm trying to undo some of what I have done in reassuring them that they do not need to be afraid to share truth and share mistakes. I've had to apologize for ways in which my fear and worry held them back and set them up to feel fear and worry. My people-pleasing and approval-seeking informed my parenting, which contributed to their own versions of approval-seeking or avoidance of conflict. There are relationships I have that are just now becoming more authentic as I try to find freedom from old patterns, but also want to be grace-giving and God-honoring in how I navigate that. There are relationships that may never be as authentic as they could be because there is a stronger need for someone to be right and stand on their own principles than to deepen the relationship through humility and vulnerability. Here's what has become true for me. When it comes to people I care about, relationship is more important than being right. I want the freedom to be who I feel God is calling me to be, and I want the people I love to want that for me too. I want my children to feel the freedom to be the people they feel God is calling them to be. I want to be a source of guidance for them, but I want to be a safe place to land when they go a different way. I want to share in their successes and comfort them in their failures. I want to reassure them that a perceived failure today is the building block for future success. Lord, I thank you for the grace and mercy, for your grace and mercy. I pray that you continue to make your presence known in my life and in the lives of those I love. I pray that anyone who struggles to know their worth and who lives in fear of man might know the healing power of your love. I pray that you teach me how to live according to your will and that you cast out fear, pride, and envy so that I might put fellowship with you and relationship with others ahead of prideful indignation. Help us to be builders of relationship and builders of the kingdom. In your name, amen. as always, my dear sister friends, I pray that the Lord fills you with gratitude, peace, and His amazing grace. I pray this episode blessed you, spoke to you, or encouraged you in some way. If so, please share it with a friend and head on over to Apple Podcasts to leave me a review. That's the only way for me to know if you're enjoying the show. Nothing blesses me more than to hear from you. Also, come on over to our free Facebook community. This is a great place for us to support one another on our faith and leadership journeys. You can find the link to the group in the show notes or go to gracefilledleader.com/community. If you have questions or content ideas for the show, please send me a message on SpeakPipe or via email. Go to gracefilledleader.com/contact and leave a written or voice recorded message. I would love to know how I can best serve you on the podcast. Now to Him who can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. Ephesians 3, verse 20. Until next time, my friends, God bless.